This presentation we're going to go over the OA template project. This is important for all of the projects that are built using OABuilder because this is the template. This is kind of the base file structure that it uses, and then that gets customized based on the actual model that's being used. The source directory has all the files as far as code files and stuff like that, configuration files. And if you notice that the word template is going to be replaced with whatever the project name is going to be, and from there we can see that the directory structure is going to be consistent throughout all the projects. The OA template project itself is also runnable, so there's a server component too. There's a web service, web server, web services, and also the client admin, just like all the other applications that it builds. One of the things about the applications is they're all set up to take advantage of the features and functionality of the model view controller component structure design pattern. So overall, there'll be a control package. Then there's the data source package, which is basically going to handle your object to relational mapping, database to object functionality. Delegate. A delegate, these are usually static objects that are set up to do functions for another object, so to speak. The help system, the model itself is, and we're going to look at another project after this presentation that's going to go further into this, but the model project is your model components. It's your every object within your model itself is going to have a class within here, and this would be fully expanded out within an application that gets generated from OABuilder. The actual objects themselves, an example would be a user object. So this shows the user class. Here's all of its properties, and then all of its getter setter type methods. Underneath this package, there's also what's called the CS objects. So these are other model objects that work along within the application. In this case, CS stands for client server, and there's the concept of having these root objects. One of the things about the client server communication is how it communicates the data and how it kind of can package those up and combine them in a way that makes it very efficient on the wire, as opposed to making a whole bunch of requests. Because an application that has lots of functionality and stuff like that, you don't want to have to go to the server for every piece of data. You want to be smart enough to know when it does go to the server, bring back a certain portion of data or chunk of data, but you also don't want to bring back too much. So with the fact that it uses what's called object serialization to get the data and everything else, is it will get the references. So if you ask for one object, it's going to get the references and stuff like that. Sometimes it's going to get too much. So within OA, within the models and how all this works, is it knows what to bring back, how to make those boundaries, and it does that by using some serialization methods that handle data that to Java or to the remoting or whatever you want to call that serialization mechanism looks to be transition, but also at the same time is also handled within the custom code that handles all that. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but basically is it handles it in an efficient way. Custom could be any other special objects that we want to create, that we want to have built into our model that aren't necessarily data bound, that aren't going to be tied into the database and stuff like that. Our filter classes, our search classes, all these automatically get generated from OABuilder, and will actually build out the data objects that are needed for that. So for search objects, it would be the search criteria that we go off of. So if you can search off a last name, first name, whatever those search properties are, it would automatically build out an object for that. Again, since it's one of these object models, or OA objects from the object model, is it's bindables to the UI and stuff like that. Some of the objects we don't want or need for them to be distributed to the other applications, to the other servers and stuff like that, other computers that are running. So in in that case, all we have to do is set it up to be a local object. So within our objects themselves, they're annotated. There's some simple annotation classes that define different things. And again, OABuilder generating all these kind of sets this up, but also hand coding's pretty straightforward to recognize and figure out in hand code. So in this case, it would say that we want this to be local only. So if a user is using a search object, that doesn't need to stay in sync with other users' search objects because they're not doing the same search. So we can keep these local, and again, the infrastructure knows how to handle all that and messaging and everything else to make it efficient. So that's our model components. Processes are any type of processes that we want to have run. It's kind of like behind the scenes processes and stuff like that, so we can build those in. We also have the concept of controllers, and we're going to look at those here a little bit more once we go through this, but the controllers usually have a lot of these processes built in. So processes, there's usually not too many of those. Remote is basically for remoting. As we build new commands and stuff into our model, we can also put in there that we want this to be remoted to the server. We want this to actually run on the server. And what's cool about that is it can run on the server, have maybe different resources that are there that are needed, but also centralized in a way so once it's done or as it's working it, it's updating the other computers that are connected to it on any data that's been changed that affects what model that they have. So sometimes, you know, again, it's more efficient to do that. Internally, we have some pre-built ones, but we always have custom ones for our applications so we can shift stuff around. So there's like file handling, spell checking is in here, and the actual server itself on how it works everything. Custom reports. The custom reports themselves are set up so it uses a HTML template with tagging for the object properties and stuff like that, how it needs to show up, how it needs to show listings, you know, loop through stuff and stuff like that. All that's done in an HTML markup using the OA HTML editor, which is basically a WYSIWYG word processor. Resources are basically the program resources that are used as far as settings and stuff like that. I'll bring one up because, and again, this makes it consistent across all of our applications that we're building. One of the nice parts is I go to another application, I know what these are going to be called and stuff like that. This is all configurable for this application. It keeps certain information, name value type pairs. It's also set up so it could be overridden like an INI file or a runtime or a system property, stuff like that. So there's this is where they're all defined so we can get as the default values, and then it's also set up for internationalization, and we can handle all that. Then there's the resource.java object, and that's within our code, mostly static methods, that we have access to any of our resource type information. Servlets are custom servlets that handle certain things. In this case, we just have a generic one called hello servlet. What happens with most of our servlets is they get moved from the template project into our OA project. Our OA is our base package of libraries that has all the different routines that are built into our package within the OA jar that all these projects use. So then the projects have it automatically. So a lot of the features can kind of end up going from a template project into the OA just because it's reusable throughout the system and stuff like that. There's servlets for handling images, big data like binary data, blobs, clobs, stuff like that, in a way that's efficient from the web apps and stuff. Utility classes, usually there's a few things, in this case licensing, and then some utility classes that sometimes we'll go and add some generic miscellaneous stuff to. The view is basically from the model view control. This is where the view components are. it will have at the top level is it will have some custom type UI components. Splash screen is there, and then again, a lot of times these components will then be turned into OA components put into the OA project. So the server side actually has the frame, which is basically all that's made of, and then from the client has the frame, the login dialog. Those are the two main pieces to that, and then within the OA is actual all of the OA objects from all the objects that were modeled. Each one of those has its own class, JFC class. Within that class, it has all the UI related stuff to represent that class. One of the things that it does is, since your UI application is using these classes in different ways and mixes in them and stuff, so how they related or work together, is how these classes are built here make them very interchangeable. It uses some interclassing type functionality that allows it to really make these a really good fit to totally match how the model works. And then we have web services, and again, all this is inherited with within our applications. It's in the OA template. OABuilder basically packages this whole thing up, and when it generates from the OA template code generation that we saw in the menu, is it will take this whole project and basically go through it all, and it will rename them from any place where it sees template to rename it to whatever project you're on, and then it will customize certain things in different areas. And that's it for this.